And you guys are good to go.
Thanks.
Live, and you're recording. And Deborah McKee is.
What do you coach or what is it?
High school volleyball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to coach a long time ago and then I stopped for 5 years. The high school coach had stopped or quit like right before season and I was the middle school coach, so they said, can you come and do something?
Yeah.
It was good though, I'm glad I did it.
Right,
It
right.
takes a lot of effort.
What's the season for girls volleyball?
It just got done. So
Okay,
it's for the fall.
Okay.
Season, yeah,
do they only have the one or do they have a half and a half?
no, they have the one.
Okay.
And then, like I'll probably help them do some traveling in the spring and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, I was out hiking behind the jump park. And some locals have cleared a beach volleyball.
Oh, yeah,
back there.
I know a bunch of people who play.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh, really?
you can't
Yeah, it's
imagine,
like, I
"Oh,
forget,
This is awesome, like.
it's like Tuesday nights or something.
How
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Really?
It's like a group of people that just gonna
So
play.
ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my brother goes pretty regularly.
We saw some people playing this. They were like, you wanna play?
Yeah, it's like a super open, just anybody who wants to. It's not
It was
competitive,
like the
but
first time I rode the fire engine in the homecoming parade,
Oh, yeah.
it was like raining. So late.
How did we do?
We got to the first day of state, but not the second day. So
Okay.
I mean, like top 16, but more like around top 14.
Fabulous. Did they have a
Oh,
good season?
yeah.
Did they like it?
Ashley, great.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Are you ready?
Okay. All right, guys, it's 3:02 on 10/29 and we'll call this meeting of the Economic Opportunity Advisory Board to order. Let's start with just introductions. Chris Wilson, member of the board.
Randy Martin, representing the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce.
Brittany Melton, voting member.
Ashley Palmer, voting member.
And Lindbergh voting member.
Melody McCandless, Grand County Commissioner.
Forrest Rogers, voting member.
Melissa Jeffers, Grand County staff.
Mark Tyner, county administrator.
And online, Jasmine
Jasmine Duncan, voting member.
and Deborah.
Visitor Deborah McKee from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity.
Our favorite visitor.
I hope.
So, yeah, it looks like we have a presentation by Corey, but I don't see him here yet. So let's move on to do the minutes and then we can come back to that if he's here. So we have two sets of minutes for approval.
Right.
Because we didn't have them in the packet the last time. So we have the 8:27 minutes and the 9:24 minutes. Anyone like to make a motion to have those approved?
I'll motion that we approve both sets of minutes.
Thanks, Jasmine. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Forrest.
Or Brittany.
Any discussion? Great. Vote all in favor of approval of the minutes, both sets.
Aye.
Great. And I think that was unanimous. So we can move on. Okay, so next up is, and Melissa, help me understand. So we have the 2024 RCOG, 2025 RCG update discussion separate from the subcommittee discussion.
Yes, updates on the already approved project.
So I hand it over to you right now.
Fantastic. I
Okay.
will take that baton. Our COG update. We are going to have to apply, well, actually, we're in the process of applying for an extension for the 2024 RCOG project, which to refresh everyone is the Mackle Phase 2 Royal Crossing project. We're going to ask for a 6-month extension. Deborah has been really generous in her time and James Dixon has been really generous in his time to help us work through the details of that. So we've got a couple of steps that we need to go through before we can make that formal request. And I'll just keep the group updated. And then the other is a question instead of an update. We have an outstanding construction project for the 2024 RCG with Mob Community Childcare. That's in March. The contract extension was until March of 2026.
Okay.
I'm afraid with that being a construction project, that we don't want to put ourselves in the same position of having to make an extension or a new contract or whatever. So what would we like the process to be in terms of follow-up with Mob Community Childcare, or does someone have an update? Do we know where they are?
Yeah, I mean, the last update that I heard from Rob was when we were, it was several months ago, you know, when we talked about where they were at over the summer. So, and, you know, as far as I know, construction hasn't moved forward, so certainly there's something to figure out.
Somewhere.
What this is funded for is to go on the property, the church property on 400 North.
Okay.
Yeah,
What's the holdup then if they already have the space?
well, what we heard over the summer was they just got the money, everything got sort of delayed. So they just got the money in the spring and they were moving forward with working with the contractor, et cetera. So that was only, you know, they'd gotten the money in, I think, this is just my recollection, around March. And we talked to them a couple months after that. And so they had moved forward with like plans and working, you know, talking to contractors, but hadn't moved forward with the project at all at that point yet. So at this point, I don't know. I don't have any further update. But it sounds like we should get one at the very least.
They have to be completed with their construction based on their contract amendment by March of 2026.
Okay,
So I
This
just,
is like 5 months.
Mhm.
Oh,
In the winter.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
whoa, that's concerning.
Yeah. Yeah, so
What happens if they don't do it? Do they just get the money back to the county?
because I mean, that's based on the contract with the county. So like as opposed to the RCOG where we're talking about rewriting a contract with the state. In this case, we're just talking about a contract with the county since it's a sub-grant.
they're both.
Okay,
So with the RCOG, the county has to work with the state to get a contract amendment or an extension. And then we still have to do that with Mackle. So the county has a contract with Mackle. In
Right.
this case, it's a contract between Mon Community Childcare and Grant County.
right.
So they had a contract with Grant County. They were given an amendment with an extension for a year because of the timing. And now that contract requires the construction be completed by March of 2026.
They were also given the money up front, so they would have to give the money back as well, like a lot of the other things, which is stuff we need to process through. Is do we give the money, do we give them the promise that we'll give them the money and then they give them, and then it's a reimbursement? But with this one specifically, he asked for the money, so the commission approved that because he said it's really hard to move forward with construction if I don't have the money up front. So the commission ended up giving him the money. So I mean, if he doesn't have it completed and we have to either claw the money back or extend the contract. And if we don't have the paperwork complete, we can't go for next year's RCG either.
So I don't know that that is like good stewardship of money in general, in my humble opinion. The reason I say that is we're trying to develop we're economic development, so if people aren't moving on the money that they have, that's a concern of mine. And we need to be diligent when we do new ones, in my opinion, that cannot happen, because why are we continuing to ask for extension? I can understand if like contractor had a problem or something along the lines, but if it's just been kind of slow and people aren't moving, that's a concern big time. So,
I definitely agree that it's a concern if people aren't moving. I'm also not clear how much movement there's been on this project or not, and I don't know if we just have.
Yeah,
an
and so
answer
maybe
to
some
that.
kind of a timeline of check-ins, with our people, when we do a contract that we have, specific timeline to, we send a letter that reaches out and ask them to come back and give information to see how it's coming along, instead of just like expecting it to be completed at that completion date, and they're like, oh crap, we didn't get it done, and that puts the county unable to go and get more money.
Yeah, so I think we already have built-in check-ins essentially every summer, right? Because that's when we do the RCG paperwork again. So that's why we had Rob come in and do an offer, or we went out and reached out to him so that we got an update. But maybe we need more,
I
right? I mean,
think
but
she
I'm,
means like status. And I love the idea of when we do get to the subcommittee conversation, talking about the process.
Yeah.
That's one of the things
We
we
should
should build
document
into the
that stuff.
process is, you know, monthly or quarterly, like, hey, how's it going? Is the project on track? What's the status?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think it's just figuring out what's the reasonable and useful time interval to be building in status updates. Right?
Yeah, and I wanted to bring this one up specifically because we are in the situation of asking for the extension.
Yeah.
So then that prompted me to go back and check the contract on
Yeah,
the
there's stuff.
prior. And I saw that it was construction completion and then March of 2026, so I'm like, ugh,
Mhm.
So
this would be
clearly,
a really good time to check in.
clearly we need a check-in with Rob.
Absolutely.
No, like, I just wonder what other counties do, like. Let's say, I don't know, like, I kinda wanna ask Deb this, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, we have a construction project, so we got approved for $100,000. Now, the first 25,000, yeah, we cut that check, they got that phase done, like, do other counties do
Yeah.
that tier?
I mean, certainly in grant management in general, you see a few different types of
Yeah.
contracts, and Deborah, please do chime in with this. I mean, I've seen like 50/50s,
Yeah.
like 50 and then it's done, or like 50/40/10, like the 10 comes at
Too
the
much
end.
Problems for our staff, but.
And then the way the state works with us
Yeah.
is a 90/10, right? That's how like the RCOGs come in. They come in with 90% of the money up front and then 10 withheld until the project is substantially completed and their sort of paperwork is able to be done towards that end. But Deborah, what do other counties do?
Yeah, so I mean, a variation, just like you stated, also a lot of folks require the match at a certain point, you know, in the project. Some counties do 100% reimbursement, so they're not reimbursed until the project is completed. You know, it really varies from county to county. I think that's something that this board is designed to come up with those ideas, right? So.
Well,
So, does he know, I mean, did he sign a document that says this? Does he know this?
Yeah,
And so he knows that this deadline is looming. So the only thing, the missing part is we don't know what he's doing to meet it. And so we just need to find out.
Yeah.
It's not like this is gonna be news for him. He's gotta be aware of it. So either he's got a plan or he doesn't.
yeah, or he needs an extension or he doesn't, or, right?
Tell me, was it for them to provide more childcare or was it just to have a better facility?
It's to expand, yeah, to do more
Definitely
childcare.
expand.
And what year was that given?
2024,
it
right?
was in 2025 that it was awarded.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
yes,
2020.
This
yes.
spring, this past spring is when they actually
Yeah.
received the money. It was from the previous year cycle.
But we already had asked for an extension?
So this is weird. So, and refresh, because maybe some people remember and some people don't, because I don't remember the details of it either. We had a project that the board had approved certain projects and recommended those to the commission. There were changes that were made.
Yeah, that's the
Toward
Chamber of
the end.
Commerce stuff. When,
Yeah.
that's the changes that were made at the end. It was like Chamber of Commerce was part of a bigger award, and then there was leadership change, Chamber of Commerce, and then there was then the redo by the commission was to, or the decision made at the recommendation of this board by the commission was then to move that money over to.
And to give the
childcare.
full 200,000, instead of the projects that were allocated, it was to give the full 200,000 to more community childcare. And then at that point, they got a 1-year extension because it was a construction project and they received the money in the spring.
Is
So
there
that's kind of
any way that we could ask Rob to show financials of if they've spent any of the money?
He already did that this summer and they have spent some of the money. We got that.
On what?
I mean, you were here for the report just as I was, so whatever you remember is just as good as what I remember. But they had a couple of additional things besides construction that they have moved forward with, including supporting, I think, like Sego Lily on the construction of a fence, to get in compliance, some additional materials and maybe training for staff. I mean, I don't remember it all, but I am sure that they had moved and spent some of the money. I mean, I think we need a status update. Would you like to reach out, or do you want us to? Do
That's
you want,
a
I can,
question
yeah.
when we talk about like,
Exactly.
what do we want the process to be?
Yeah,
I just wanted to see if anybody knew. If nobody knows, then I'll go ahead and I'll check in with him.
great.
And then as soon as I know what he's doing, I'll send it out to the board
Perfect.
just to give a status update.
That sounds great. And then, I mean, I think how we manage this stuff going forward, all those big questions you bring up, Brittany, of like, how do we design the disbursements of the awards so that we have accountability? And how do we have status updates on a regular basis? Like, that is a part of why it ought to be, in my opinion, a part of the discussion of how we document this process going forward and make it better and smoother and just like have it put in place. Because those are, I mean, they're really important questions and we need to have a clear set of answers for them for sure. Anything else from your side, Lisa?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Great. Corey jumped on, so let's jump back to that agenda item. So Corey just wanted to have a little conversation / presentation on city collaboration with our board, basically, and share some of his ideas. And I think this is relevant to the sort of, we're going to get into conversations in this meeting about sort of the purpose of this board and what are we doing, what are the bylaws. So I think this will help set up some of that conversation, or maybe not set up, but provide food for thought.
And just
conversation.
really quickly, Chris, for you, I know Deborah had told me that she had a conflict. She's got about 5 or 10 minutes, I think, max before she dives off.
Okay.
And wanted me to ask, and then I forgot if anyone would have any questions for her before she dives off.
And I put it in the chat too. I have to leave at 3:25, sorry. But yeah, I just wanted from the state's perspective and your bylaws conversation and everything like that. I just wanted to be available for questions. I hate to move the agenda item up, Chris, but
no, let's
if anybody
anyone
has any
questions for you,
questions,
let's please do those now.
yeah. And I'm always available. I want everybody on the board to know. I will put my number in the chat. If you need it, you can call, text me, email me. I'm always happy to support and answer questions. So
Thank you.
So are we talking about the bylaws?
I mean, we're not gonna like enter into that full conversation right now, but if anyone has questions for Deborah on the bylaws conversation.
Hey, Deborah, from the state's perspective, would you like this board to basically work on the RCG and the RCOG grants? Basically, that's it. Is that what we're looking for from the state perspective?
I need you to work on those things. I do, and some main points and some information I've been sharing with others in the community who have been asking is that no other boards that I'm aware of, I don't want to say 100%, right? Because there may be a board out there in a county that I don't cover, but as far as I know, and some of the outreach managers that I've asked, I am unaware of any other counties, economic opportunity boards, who have additional duties other than those. From our perspective, that's what we want you to be doing. Although, it's really up to the commission as they're the legislative body over this, this board. So yes, we want you to do those things. I would offer you to think deeply about those duties. It is creating procedures and policies for your sub-grant program. It is, doing so much more in suggesting projects, which is advising on economic development activities, right? If you're suggesting projects that are economic development that you think RCG funds should be used for, or RCOG funds should be applied for. So I just want you to know that it's a lot. And I think that your regular meeting should be very full of so many conversations about your RCG and about your RCOG. So if that helps, Brittany.
That's great, thanks.
Okay. Try to get more in there to cover any other questions anybody's not asking, but that's really what we're looking for. So, and also reporting, reporting that's coming up and things like that.
So are we held accountable to the state or are we held accountable to the county when it comes to if the grants don't get spent the proper way?
Our contracts are with the county, but in order, like our administrative law, our administrative ruling requires that your board be part of advising on those and be part of the reporting. If you're fulfilling those duties and I'll say that we've never had a county have to pay back money. So it's also a kind of trick question, Brittany, but if those weren't fulfilled, it would be on the county, And I mean, if you're still advising on those grants and it doesn't happen, that doesn't really fall on you, right? That's somewhere else within the project.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your help, Deborah.
Yeah, and I'm always here. Like I said, I'm always happy to answer questions. I think you guys are critical to economic development in Grand County. And, I want you to think about how important the RCG and the RCOG really are, and how important it is coming up with projects for those fundings to advise the county on. And you're so lucky now that you have an economic development person, right? You have staff, county staff too, to work with. So I hope that helps. But I'll watch the recording for the rest of how the meeting goes. And please, like I said, feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks so much, Deborah.
Okay. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah.
Okay, let's kick it over to Corey.
All righty. Well, thanks everyone. And this is something that, as we move through this, it really was more something that I think I had approached Chris with prior to considerations of bylaw amendment. But given this topic's come up, it does kind of fold into the question of how this body expects to perform, which is kind of just, again, main topic of how we're approaching this. But also from a grander scale, I think the county and city have both advanced a lot and invested in a lot of updates to what should be guiding documents for implementation policy. And I've been a broken record, at least the last couple of meetings with this, to the effect that I think the city is needing and looking to work through and towards a lot of our policies that through our Tomorrow Together, and then what was even prior, our general plan, and then into our strategic planning sessions, and then strategic annual plans. From that is how to get that ball rolling, and not unlike the county with the Trail to Tomorrow, their general plan, and then what will be obviously with Melissa, her kind of more specific and surgical strategic plans, is that more or less what I'm coming to is, and this is what we've observed, and in parallel, our community is working through, very specifically, we know this, a housing crisis, but we are very and most immediately behind that, trying to coordinate from an economics perspective, the same type of lift. And so when we see these two very robust elements that, as anytime I've talked to anybody about this, I never separate those two items. And it is something I've talked with Chris and maybe even in these groups, is that both of those intrinsically tied. I know Aaron, he's been on many of these boards kind of saying the same thing of when we're talking economics, we often so quickly revert to, discussions about housing because that informs how our economic growth can happen. But then when we're talking about in the housing task force, how the economic conditions are affecting why housing is or isn't being invested in and built. So as I'm seeing this, what I've was hoping to approach this body with was as these discussions about applicability towards advancing implementation and policies beyond, of course, just your core premise of allocation of grants or ours, I'll say ours, and recommendations in that advisory capacity is what else did the body, according to its bylaws, I went into a fairly robust study, and I won't pretend to fully comprehend the entire history of Grand County over the last 2 decades economic growth of where economic development was being housed between a city, county, the tourism council. It seems to have evolved in really pretty rapid succession through who's housing this and who's responsible for it and what's our plan. But where I think we're all really familiar with is our jurisdictions investing in large plans that without that follow through are just dusty plans on the shelf we spent a lot of money for and we're not really seeing movement forward. So that was kind of with the city, we're trying to grapple with that of move towards better implementation, which is exactly what I believe Melissa's trying to do with the 2030 GP. But where does that leave us as a whole is that is where I believe our jurisdictions, at least as far back as 2019, when Zachariah was in his economic development director position at the county, in tandem with the at time city's planning director, we're trying to begin coordinating some of this. And there's folks on here like Jasmine, you've been on for a long time and seen a lot of this evolution. So I know I'm coming kind of late to the table. I'm trying to learn what I can. But what I'm seeing is a vacuum. Whereas the housing task force, there was the need at a state level to some degree to create a housing plan. So who's going to do that? Well, both jurisdictions can't take on that per se. So they resolve to engage in an interlocal agreement through probably a joint resolution to establish that housing task force with bylaws to execute those policies. So what I'm saying now is as these bylaws begin to refocus this group, it will further extend this vacuum of stuff that is not happening in advancing this community forward in a more specifically jurisdictionally oriented advisory capacity. We're the city and the county acting on their own, not in coordination of what should be an overall community advancement of this super essential thing, which is economic development. City can't do it on our own, and I don't believe the county can do it on their own either. So when with this body, what we had before in the bylaws, as I understood them, was a bit of maybe that was something that was within the purview that we kind of the essence of some of this discussion. But as this board maybe does move towards really focusing specifically on that, it's not that this group or even that body wouldn't inform this potential vacuum or group that is then constructed. But just cut to the chase, it's kind of evolved into, does our community require an economic task force in a similar capacity that we have a housing task force to unify and advance a unified economics plan? So I see, and definitely from where at least I've read through recently, the general plan 2030 for the county, a lot of the policies, again, I'm just seeing that we're too intertwined to be able to actually execute a lot of these really more tangible implementation elements. A lot of it can be vague of, we're going to explore this and look at that. And those are great goals, maybe even bordering on objectives, but they're not policies. That's not something you can write into local law. They're ambitions, but not practicable elements. So this is just, again, I've been such a broken record, and I apologize, on how these guiding documents, for me, are the bread and butter to getting stuff done. If we're relying on reinventing the wheel every turnover of appointments or elections or even board capacities, we're just going to be reinventing the wheel. And this is where I'm going to look to those members on this board or others that have been in this community, engaged in this way for a long time, and correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe if we're seeing elements that are close but not quite right, is I'm seeing an opportunity with this potential bylaws adjustment and then this vacuum to do, maybe there is that option. So it was more of a prompt to this group, beyond like a presentation or a commentary. I did connect with the housing task force and some of their kind of committee leadership to have us run down their history. Why were you created? How were you created? Would that make sense in an economics perspective? So far as I can tell, it is. It's a joint resolution of this community saying, look, as a whole, we need to unify and act in order to actually get anything done. So in order to do that, we need to have an interlocal agreement that establishes a body with established bylaws outside of maybe this group that then can act in a mutual and shared capacity to both the city and the county to advance these goals. And probably what this board will be doing is much more aggressively approaching those types of grant funded projects. So for me, it was kind of a slight pivot from where I think I was approaching Chris originally to where maybe we're talking now, but it's maybe not on its own worth discussing. But as we go through the rest of these items, maybe we'll come back to it, or I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts if there's no appetite for this, because that's the whole thing is everyone in this room, I think they're the professionals the electeds would want to hear from. You are the, for lack of a term, the professionals. You are the people that understand the actual economic situations because you're all coming from that place to say this is what's working, this isn't what's working. Here are the campaigns that we believe we can unite against. So that's a united voice that I think has a lot of power to help advance both jurisdictions' already existing goals, objectives, and already stated policies towards implementation, and then create new ones that are more unified potentially. So anyway, maybe that's my piece for now. I don't know where we want to go from there, but really appreciate the opportunity to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. I mean, I think if there are a couple of comments that people want to make, we should not spend the rest of the meeting on this topic, but yeah.
I was trying to follow a lot what you were saying, Corey. Are you suggesting that we make a joint task force economic development board? Is that kind of what you're saying?
He's asking that question, I think,
Yeah.
right? Is like, do we need a housing task force for economic development? Like something that can bring together actors from the city government, county government, and maybe citizens as well, something along those lines, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's the
It's funny, I'm on the housing task force and it's really like, we had this thing like, who's on it and who's not? Like, you just show up for 3 meetings, you're on it. And I was like, oh, I'm on it? I didn't know that. So,
So I will
looking for
say,
comment on this right now, or no?
Yeah, I think we have space for a couple of comments on this.
One of the things I think about is like getting people to participate. We have, organizational factors, and it's like, how much okay, I'm gonna give up another hour or 2 every month for another thing. And, for a town of 5 to 10,000, like, how much do we need on that? I don't know, that'd be my comment.
I agree with you, Aaron. And then also I want to speak to a little bit of my own thought process with it. The big thing, and this might go to Mark a little bit, but administration needs to be the boss in a lot of ways. I felt like, especially with the city, and I mean, we've met with Corey 3 times on one project, still hasn't gotten anywhere, and it's frustrating. So you can create another housing task force and another person to have an opinion and whatever, but it doesn't get the job done. Execution is the problem with both, I would say, the county and the city. And I'm sorry, I'm being very candid here, but we just need to do the job. If the boxes are checked, and the dots are, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, then let's get the projects done. But what's irritating is this nonsense of waiting and, oh, well, maybe you need to talk to this person. Oh, well, now talk to this person, and everything you think you're going for. And you had to make a plan that says it's within, or it's, here's why it coincides with the city's plan or the county's plan and all these different things. And then you present it and it's like, oh, well, actually, and you spend money on surveys and dumb things that you didn't think was necessary, but you did it. And then you get to the end result and they're like, oh, well, that doesn't really work either. So I don't want a committee or another thing. I just want people to do their jobs when we have these projects come forward. So that's my opinion.
I mean, the one thing I would say is that just from being on this board for a few years, there was a few years back when we tried to consider an RCOG project to do work downtown on the sort of downtown business corridor, like Main Street business corridor, and try to approach the city and figure out if we could do that collaboratively. And at the time, we didn't really get a positive reception from the city. They said they had some other priorities they were working on, and that project did not move forward. I mean, it just got me realizing, sort of looking at the challenge of coordinating on economic development between the city and the county. Because what we do know is that the county's business core is in the city, right? So like most of the economic, product, like GDP, local GDP that happens within Grant County happens within city boundaries. And so if we have a vision, that the county is what's outside of the city limits on economic matters, then we're leaving things on the table. We're like, we're not going to get our job done. If the county can't help spur economic development that is both within Moab City and beyond Moab City and the rest of Grand County, then we've got a problem. And so I do think that there's a need to figure out ways to work together. Now, whether this is the right mechanism or not, a task force, I'm not like, I don't have a strong opinion on that, but I do feel like there's a real space to try to figure.
I think that's why I was excited about the golf course project. That's a city.
Exactly. And I would say that it would be cool going forward. I mean, for me, because I really think that if we can find ways to help like have some positive momentum be built up between the city and county on joint projects, that would be a real win. So like the golf course is one example of that. If we could consider in the future, again, when there might be more appetite for it, something that's like a Main Street corridor, our COG project or something along those lines, that could be a really nice way to get everybody working together, get some positive momentum, get the ball rolling on that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure.
Well, I feel like we're jumping all over the place a little bit here. So yes, the planning process can be frustrating. Should it be more streamlined? Probably. Is that our job? No, right? I mean, and so I see your point that if we were adding to make it even more complicated, that'd be bad. But here's the thing. There's two parts of economics, right? Or maybe three, or maybe 50, but there's several parts, right? Economic policy is what the elected officials do. And we could advise on it, but it's their decision. So that's policy, right? But then there's economic information, like what is happening and making sure that the decisions that the elected officials are making are based on what's happening, what's really happening and the facts. And so in some ways, what the planning commission does, and what other advisory boards do, water, whatever, is they try to keep elected officials, their role is to keep elected officials up to date on what's happening. And that's the role of an advisory board, is to say, here's what the floods happened and here's our problem or whatever, like, so there's the information from the community and giving that to the elected officials in a way they can use it. That's really important. And then sure, you could suggest some policies. Now, we've been told quite clearly that that we're not meant to be involved in an economic development policy, that our only purpose is to give these grants. And, the grants are important and great, but $200,000, no matter what you do with it, is not an economic plan for Grant County. It's just not enough money. It's not, it's just a small grant program. I mean, it's good. It's a great thing, but it's not economic development. So part of our problem is our name. We probably should have been just named like Grant Committee and not economic development, because then it would be clear our only job is to do grants. But I think that there is information that we have and people who are willing to serve on this committee about their own business experience, about what they're seeing with other businesses. I think we also have, like, when you have a plan, when you pay money for a plan, which I've been involved in getting paid to write plans for other communities, there is that implementation hurdle, right? We paid for Trails to Tomorrow, and of course, when you implement it, you want to make sure it's right. Does it resonate? Does it have broad-based public support? Is it still timely? Like, there's all these questions. You don't want to just implement it immediately unless it, so there's an implementation problem. So these are all separate things. Gathering information about how our economy is doing and conveying that to our elected officials is important, and somebody should be doing it. That's one thing, and maybe suggesting policies, but this other piece of, so I guess that's the piece I'm a little bit stuck on, is how is our commission getting information from our community about economic development? Like, how are there good ways for that to happen? Is that happening? Because I feel like in planning and water and some of these other advisory boards, there's information flowing to the commission. And I just wonder if we're not working on that, because there are things happening. We have more competition than we have ever had in Moab. Every single day, there is a community saying, visitors, come see us, because we've got this trail or that recreation asset or this, and we're not really addressing that. So there are economic trends out there that our commission should be thinking about that they're not. And so, that I know of. And so, anyway, so it does seem like we've been told clearly that we're not to work on policy or even data, and we're only to work on grants, but it does leave a bit of a hole. And that's what Corey is saying, is that, the city and the county, there should be some way. I mean, one of the ways we're trying to solve the housing thing is by having that, what do we call it? Housing task force. And so,
The housing task force main goal is to provide data, like we got $10,000 to see like where the housing market's at and whatnot. And it's kind of nice because it is very informal, like you can just show up and participate. And so maybe, like.
well, that's something we could do at the chamber. We could have an economic development workshop and have anyone who wants to come, and we've thought about doing like a SWOT analysis.
Right.
What do you see as our strengths, weaknesses, whatever?
Cause I see this as like a question of time and organization. I mean, like, where's USU? Where's Department of Workforce Services? Already people don't like come to this thing and you're asking like more input. Like, I just think we're not a city of 1 million people where you just pull volunteers everywhere. It's probably gonna be the same people, right? That shows up.
Sure.
We
but
had
that's
Can I interject?
Please, can we let Corey jump in?
Yeah, I'd like to circle back. I think between Brittany's statement and Ashley's and Aaron's yours, those are three. None of those are centralized. What I'm saying. I mean, they're all circling around it, but Aaron, I would disagree with you on the function and specifics of the housing task force, especially given my research into why it was developed, how it's supposed to function, especially as a policy function towards a specific plan. And then Brittany, I kind of do take exception to that comment because that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. And really, again, what I'm trying to get at is, and Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and in your interpretation, your general plan and what you're supposed to be executing, but a number of those are going to require interjurisdictional coordination. That's my assessment of those. Without that function, it's either you and I creating a joint resolution together outside of any public input that then does go to the bodies, and they're not accountable to any particular plan. That, Aaron, was what the housing task force was built around, was to generate and maintain affordable housing plan. And now is evolving, which is where they're having dysfunctions with the bylaws, dysfunctions with what their roles are, is now moving from a plan to implementation policies. And I understand that dysfunction they're trying to go through right now. But it is centralized. It is not another just advisory body of people's opinions. That's where the wheels come off. It is a very tight and linear progression of how to get things done that's an approved plan. So I would resist against both those. Ashley, I think your comment, that is the void I'm trying to discuss. And now I'm not trying to say this EOAB body needs to be that. In fact, I'm saying it is resolving to function the way it is meant to according to the state. And that fits better than the dysfunction that seemed to be happening before, is where you had your obligations and then your foot halfway into the door of a general advisory body at broad. So I'm saying the refinement of the EOAB to its bylaws of its core makes a lot of sense. But as this was the running core until Melissa stepped in, the last person I had really talked to was Zachariah Levine about interjurisdictional coordination. I mean, we've had grants, we've had projects, but that's the point, I think, to Brittany's point. I'm not talking about projects. I'm talking about large scale, long range horizons of policy implementation. So that is maybe the break apart of projects to policy. And I think that's actually kind of what you were getting at as well. But in all three of those comments, I saw us going off in totally different tangents. None of them are tied to, I think, the real core of what the materials actually say, what a lot of the bylaws actually say. So I think if we're going to have an informed and educated discussion about this, I think the whole point was, I believe I'm about to very imminently see a vacuum of how to advance both a county and city strategy to implement what we all see as a really crucial need in this community. Because without this economic development and vitality, the housing will not come. I believe housing's the first step, but we are on the doorstep of thousands of units being brought to the community, but without a more robust swing of the economics, that is not going to be sustainable. So to me, this is urgent, it's imminent, and it is going to keep the elected officials I'm so sorry, the word, and I want to use the correct word
Well,
here.
here's what you're saying.
Actually, wait one
You're saying
second.
that it's we
Ashley.
need to be including
Uh,
this.
It's going to keep the elected officials accountable to the plans they've already adopted and all the work that's being done along the way. I think sure, I'm happy to hear anything else.
I was just trying to give
Thanks.
you the word.
Okay, so I know
Yeah.
Melody wants to jump in, and let's also use that as an opportunity, if this works for you, Melody, to transition to the bylaws conversation. Maybe you can talk to us about what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely appreciate what Corey is saying, and I ran my election, so I'm gonna speak on, first of all, a little bit my own personal, and then I'll talk, broad for the commission, but I ran on city-county collaboration. I've been trying this entire year to get a meeting together with the five, the seven, and the ones, so our admin, I get pushback, so until that happens, the collaboration that Corey's talking about will never happen. So we can make all the boards we want, we can do all the things we want to do, but until we have our city and county governing bodies on the same page and working together and fixing some things that are like mysterious lists, then that can't happen. So as an elected official, I'm working on to get that to happen. So as long as I'm on the commission, I'm going to continue to try to get quarterly city and county meetings, and that's where those people are gonna be like, what plans can we, they get a RCG, they get a RCOG, the city does get one of their own, so but we could put them together and say, hey, we're gonna use ours for this piece of this project, and you're gonna use yours for this piece of the project. 100% think that's what needs to happen. I have zero pushback on that, but I just know that this board's not gonna be able to make that happen right now. And not even a board that you guys go out and have at the coffee shop is gonna be able to make that happen either. It's gonna take the elected officials and the mayor and the admin from both county getting together and making a plan and fixing some of the things that are broken first before we can go forward. And so it's loud and clear. I understand what you guys want, when we transition to the bylaws of this board right now, and so just to address Ashley, is the state names us the County Economic Opportunity Advisory Board. That's in state code 63N 4-803. That wasn't the county naming it or anything else, And so, and the bylaws specifically state, and those do anyways, not our bylaws right now, but the state's code specifically states what this board's supposed to be doing. And I do think that we can do better. 100%. I think we can do better. I think we can do better on our RCG grants, our COG grants. I don't want to blame or put anything in the past of what's happened with them, but I think that we can do better on creating that policy and procedures. I don't think it should be a subcommittee either. I think, if we go down to only having 7 people on this board, all 7 people can be involved. And I can discuss that as well. It doesn't get rid of anyone. Jasmine's position will be the only one that's open. It'll be that city municipality, or that municipality position. Forrest was leaving anyways, unfortunately.
Can I
But
ask
if you wanted to stay, you could reapply, but
Can I ask you about that specifically?
Yeah.
The composition piece, because I'm trying to understand it too, but from what looking at the bylaws rewrite, I hadn't noticed this earlier. It looks like,
so it's 9 people currently, and it's gonna go down to 7.
yeah, the numbers are easy when you
Yeah.
talk about it at macro, but
2 of the
private
private
sector.
sector, but the thing is, it wouldn't change anything because we have those people in the county positions, and so you'd fill into those, so you just move into those.
So how would that, because that's exactly my
Like-
question is like,
with the board currently, the way that it is
right,
right
like,
now, we'll just say for the beginning of next year, because we only have really like 1 more meeting left of this year.
2 more, but yeah.
2, so it would specifically look like this: 1 county representative, which is a non-elected staff of the commission, so we have Mark over here. 1 representative of the municipality in the county, and that's currently Jasmine, but she doesn't want to stay on the board. And then one representative appointed from the Moab Chamber of Commerce, so that's not a code thing, but I left that in there. So that's basically, you know, representing the private sector.
Yep.
So, and then one workforce development representative.
Yep.
And that's currently Ashley.
Yep.
One private sector representative, that's currently you. And
Well,
then
we
two-
currently have 3 private sector
Yeah, but
representatives.
two members of the public who resides in the county is gonna be Aaron and Brittany.
Okay, but how legally, what is that, when you, I mean, okay, if tomorrow there's a bylaws change. And what that says is that this board consists of these representatives. And then those representatives don't fit these people around the board don't fit the categories there. It seems to me,
Do fit those categories, right?
Yeah,
that's not how they were appointed on the board.
well,
I mean,
She wasn't appointed on the board as a workforce person, but we changed her around.
exactly, it took commission action to do so. That's what I'm trying to ask.
Commission action. I mean, this bylaw change is gonna be commission action, so I can lay those out.
So
So I
separately
can lay
though,
those out separately in a separate email, you know, an email to the commission that, you know, these will be the representatives that are filling these shoes and the end of their term.
okay, that's what I was trying to ask. It's like the mechanics of how that process
Yeah.
would take place.
Anyone off the board, I don't wanna kick anybody off the board, you know,
Yeah.
it was an opportunity to, you know, be able to, I think that 7 people is going to be more effective than 9. And especially to follow through these policies and procedures, and that's what state this, you know, we only need to have 7 board members.
Is Jasmine the only one that you're concerned about because she's the municipality?
Yeah, so I'm not.
Which is a
I think
state
that
mandated
it's a state,
category.
yeah, so the state mandate position, a representative of a municipality in the city, in the county. So we would either need to go to Castle Valley municipality or to the city and say, hey, you know, can you select somebody? They maybe need to put an appointment forward for that and not necessarily leave it out to advertisement. That might be the best way to handle that position, is to reach out to the city and say, hey, we have a spot open for this, who do you want to put on there? Or, you know, or to Castle Valley and say, hey, do you guys have somebody else? I think Jasmine would have probably spoke up and let us know if there was someone from Castle Valley that might want that spot.
So that's actually how we did it the last time. That's how I ended up on this board. The county commission asked the municipalities to have somebody volunteer, basically.
Yeah, and so I think that's how we handle that.
I was the only one interested then, and none of our positions have changed. So we can ask, but.
So we might have to move to the city, so we'll have to move into the.
Yeah, you might,
city to-
if you can't talk Corey into it, I don't know what you're gonna
I'm
do.
trying to talk Corey into it, but. So that's how the composition would work, and so we would just change them around, but they got changed when they did the bylaws in December. I mean,
Oh, it can
those
happen.
got changed and
No,
then
no,
these
no.
got changed, so everyone's on the board currently, will be in, you know, 2026.
Yeah.
Will.
So your plan is to sort of add that to the motion,
I can, yeah.
something
that's what-
that, I mean, I'm just my reading of it when I dug into it, because I hadn't dug into it before, like I said, was that it might not just happen automatically based on the way the categories are worked out and the way people were appointed to categories. So it seems like it might need to happen intentionally, meaning probably a motion, but I don't know if you had a different
Yeah, I'll
plan.
put that in my motion that, we're gonna change the bylaws and that these will be the people that fit into these
Into these
spots.
categories. Okay.
But that does, if these go into effect,
I'm taking a.
you get 1 month off.
Well, we got 2.
I know, but these probably won't come into effect, well, they probably be in effect beyond next meeting.
Well, you won't, I'm not leaving until after the December meeting.
That's fine.
So when Corey threw out so much information, I was like trying to wrap my head around it. Do you feel like the county can meet his needs then? And like, you don't want like, what he's asking, I think has a lot of good points, right? And it was like, oh, how I see is like, we're an organizational thing, like if you want our input, we meet every, you know, like every month, and then, but like, he's looking for these, like, what he's looking for. And I'm just like, yeah, like, what's that look like? How do you meet his kind of like asks? Cause I think that's like, oh, yeah, that's really important. Or how do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's something that I can do on my own. I mean, it's something that the commission and the county and the city council and the mayor are gonna have to step up towards too. I mean, I think that they're valid, and I think that this is what this board's been asking for as well. However, that collaboration between the city and the county is not gonna happen until the city and county elected officials.
You see
same
that as
page.
only an elected official business.
Well,
not-
and then for them to say, hey.
Maybe from there it builds up.
And then we wanna put this together, like, let's,
That
that's
makes
how the
sense.
task force got created. It wasn't individual, it was a collaboration between the two, and so if the city and the county have a collaboration, say, you know, we want this, then that would happen at that point in time. I mean, could they maybe just do it on their own? Yeah, I think that the city and the county could absolutely, I take offense, honestly, that I don't think that I know what's going on in our economy, you know, I think that there's a lot of people on our city and our county council and commission that know what's going on economically in our community and want to grow that economy, and we also know what's going on in other areas, you
One thing I
know.
would say there, Melody, and this is something, because I agree with you that it would probably be something that would follow, a meeting between the electeds, if it was to exist. But for years, I worked on public policy at the national and international level and saw again and again that groups from the private sector and citizen groups, one of the key roles they can play is that they will have terms that will be different than electeds, right? Or will just be volunteer bodies like a chamber of commerce or something like that. Like, what I'm trying to say is that electeds change constantly. And so if we just rely on connections between city electeds and county electeds, like interparliamentary groups internationally and things like they come and go constantly because you get a big change in leadership on one side, or the person who was taking the charge, like say you, for example, you're trying to take charge of putting together this meeting. Well, when we've got a champion like you can probably make that happen. And you're the best person. You're the only person, someone from the government, elected, is the only person that can make that happen. But to get an agenda that transcends beyond terms of elected officials, it can be really stabilizing and useful to have citizens and or business groups involved in the ideas creation part and the implementation of ideas.
Yeah,
So that's where it's like, it just adds an extra element, a really useful one, when you do invite in outside.
Yes, and that is the only way it gets
Goal.
done.
I mean, those communities that have strong, principles, or whatever you want to call them, goals of what they want to achieve in their community that transcend the terms of elected officials are succeeding.
That's the
That's,
key. It
it's
is
really
the
true,
key.
because
And
other communities that don't have that are just on the whipsaw. Like, you see in Green River, they wanted to bring in visitors, they hired a tourism person, that tourism hired a bunch of advisors. They got a bunch of advice, and then they had new county commissioners, they threw out all those plans, they didn't execute any of them, and Green River's back to like, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
can I jump in? Because Ashley and Chris, you've nailed it. You've exactly nailed it. In that without a momentum behind that elected element, or even Melissa or myself, it will die. You'll be continually reinventing the wheel or arguing that there's a wheel at all. Yet what we're talking about, these plans or these, whether they even be policies or projects, initiatives, whatever it might be, there already exists. So the idea that we're talking about, we'd have to do, they already exist. We have a general plan. You have a general plan. Trails to Tomorrow, Tomorrow Together. It's already all there. And that was, I think, one of Melissa's very first statements is like, I've got a big to-do list. All I'm saying is I've cross-referenced, I've synthesized both of our lists together, and I think it was 90% of them agree with each other, and even maybe a lesser degree were the same things. So if you're taking your stab at it, we're taking our stab at it, but we're not doing this together, it won't be effective. So I think that's my point is, apart from Melissa and I coordinating, like I said, together directly, and then we go to the elected bodies without you to get this ILA or what would even just be a joint resolution, without the body to carry that further beyond the elected, or even beyond the staff to have that accountable. That is how the affordable housing plan has maintained and beginning implementation pieces. I'm telling you that that's my biggest, what we're seeing this vacuum is it, I don't know. And this is where I was like, please check me, Jasmine, Chris, anybody else from a much larger historical period. I don't think we've ever effectively had anything advancing a joint level plan to that degree. So what we do now have are isolated plans. Great. They agree with each other 90% of those items. A few of them are even not only agreeing, but the same thing. So how is it that we don't have a joint plan to advance those implementation policies, specifically when they depend on the other jurisdiction? That's what I'm trying to get at. And so I think, but I want to jump in because I didn't want to contradict Chris or Ashley. I'm saying you guys are nailing it, and that needs to be heard.
Thanks.
And I do hear it loud and clear, and I know that you guys, that's what you wanted this board to do, but I want us to do our job really, really well on this board. And then we can move forward, and I think that interlocal government agreement that we do, that we decide if we want an economic advisory board in a different capacity is gonna have to come from the city and the county
Yes,
collaboration.
yeah, I'm
on that.
not saying this board should be that. In fact, I'm saying exactly, I think what it is you're saying, Melody, is this EOAB can't do that because it has not been able to do that, nor can it really seem to go that way where remove.
We're statutorily prohibited from it.
Well,
From
we're not,
what?
as of now, I mean, I think that's part of the discussion here too, and I hear a lot of, I hear all these different perspectives, right? I hear Deborah saying this is how most of these boards work around around the state, is that they have a more focused mission. And I hear Melody telling us, that there's concern that there needs to be more focus on the grants. Like, I hear that loud and clear. But I do think there's been, I mean, if you certainly just look at our bylaws, there is this advisory mission. I think that the question is, I mean, and we all know, this board was just created, you could say in 2022, maybe, right? We had a couple of different boards and then they got combined in 2022. There have been bylaws revisions like multiple times. I mean, we're clearly are a body still trying to figure out how it works, right? Like what it does and how it works. And so I do think it's accurate to say that the part of the mission that this board has been so far given and not fulfilled as well is that broader mission to spur economic development beyond just through the mechanisms or the grants that the board clearly has a need to exist for.
I guess with what Melly was just saying, I agree that what I'm saying is there's about to be a greater vacuum created that this board shouldn't be worrying about. It should be Melissa and I looking at the synthesis of all these elements, and then both of us together, hopefully with an encouraging directive of our administration saying, yeah, these are clearly already stated goals, policies, objectives. We need to coordinate on those. So Melissa and I are going to come up with a joint resolution for the elected county and the elected city to say, yep, clearly these are all aligned plans. We are going to collaborate in this very specific capacity, which would then spur us to go and find whatever that new body is, not this body. That's what I am trying to say. But as this is the current acting body that has inherited all these variations and variables, I wanted to bring it to you guys as the standing guard of what this was going to be, is saying, hey, this is where I think the city is at least going to approach the county and say, hey, I see this vacuum that's now with the EOB concentrating on grants. I see this vacuum. I believe we should go this way. I want to bring that to you guys for discussion, thoughts, and hopefully input for me to bring to the county as well as my administration. So that's my piece. I'm not trying to manipulate EOAB. I'm not trying to jump down Melissa's role of things she needs to do, because I think we've got basically the same to-do list. It's uniting those is what my hope was. So I feel I was misunderstood with a little bit of my approach. Hopefully that's a little more clear now.
No, and part of it is the way that this conversation was set up and the day that it was set up on, because what I'm trying to do now is to have us be transitioned fully into the bylaws conversation. And the commission voted to postpone so that we could have a conversation about it and offer feedback. And I think that's what we're, want to spend a good chunk of time here today doing, and we've been doing. So I think we've talked a little bit about the composition element, and I don't think that I've heard a real bunch of concern around the table about a change in numbers, but I think now's the time to speak if you have real concerns about that shift from 9 to 7. And then I want to move on to the other piece of it, which I don't think we've had a big conversation about yet.
Well, the system that Melissa and you guys designed last year that allowed us to vote on all the, was very detailed, and it took a lot of time. 2 transit lane flights in my park. It to grade, to do the job of giving the grants out. That system was very efficient in a lot of ways, and so it could tolerate more people participating, you have more perspectives. And as you sort of, integrate the grades that everyone gave and see where it came out, there is an argument for more people might get you better consensus of what the grades are gonna be. But that system isn't totally automatic, there was still a lot of discussion, and the discussion does take longer.
I think
So-
7 people's a lot of people.
Sure, so I don't think that's really, I mean. There's no answer to this, like 7, 9, there's no like right answer to that,
Yeah.
but.
Well, have we had
It's pretty-
anybody even put in, oh, my next question is, do we have one?
That's what it's been forwarded
We've
to
had
me
one
anyway,
person,
is one
okay,
application
But
we have
applications
sitting.
in there. So,
Yes.
and that's the thing is like, when you're just having an open
No,
seat, you're just trying to, I mean,
No, I'm trying to
Yeah.
move on from that part of the
Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
because it sounds to me like there's not a big disagreement here. So,
people have, I
So-
have the ones.
so I think that the next, I mean, from my perspective, and we can bring up other ones, but I mean, the big question is about what the purpose of the board is. And whether the board is well situated, given its history, given its composition, everything, to do something more than simple grant management. I mean, I tend to think that we will have a stronger group of people around the table if it's not just a grant management group. I mean, I think that, not sure that everyone who's sitting around the table right now would have joined this board just for the management of the RCG and RCOG. And I do think they're very important to our community. I'm not trying to diminish that at all.
People want to leave the board because they don't like the new bylaws, I would totally understand, or if they stayed on the board until which I would say at least a year down the road happens, for the, a different, economic board, I would totally understand that as well, so.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that even though that mission, that side of the responsibilities of advising and trying to promote economic development is more complicated, we haven't maybe done quite as well on it as the grant side. I think it's the more important mission. It seems to me that the most important thing that we can do as a citizen advisory board on economic development, the most important thing we could do is help advise the city and county, but really the county in this case, on economic development. That we could, be a clearinghouse for projects, that we can try to be a place where you'd come if you'd want to try to build up greater city county cooperation. That we can be a resource for the Planning and Zoning Commission without having a responsibility or a mandate, as the bylaws currently state. I don't have any attachment to that at all. But having a duty and role and really just a number one goal of promoting economic development seems crucial to what this board is all about. And taking that away to be a technical grant management board feels like a real loss to me. And so that's where I hope one way or another, through conversation and a change of the way these bylaws are being revised, or through further action in the future, I hope we don't miss out on having a venue for citizen and business participation in advising our community and guiding our community forward on economic development. That feels like a really important job that I think having a diverse group of people that represent different little corners of our economy can do. And like I say, admittedly, have we figured out how to do that perfectly? No, I mean, I think we're exploring that space. But I think it's an important space. And so I think it's worth us having a conversation about, sort of this, what is the goal of this group as a body, and how that's written into the bylaws or not written into the bylaws. And if all this is within the context of, first of all, I should repeat that since this has been proposed, we've had some back and forth, and you've been willing to engage with me and listen and talk about what you're trying to accomplish and listen to what I have to say and think about it and maybe make some changes based on it. I'm very clear that I appreciate that dialogue. And I hope that we can have a little bit more dialogue here today about that topic.
And does anybody else have, I mean, I know
Yeah.
Chris was at the meeting, but did anybody else watch the meeting? Does anybody have questions as to why, I mean, because I spoke to Aaron and I spoke to Chris. But I haven't spoke to you or Jasmine or Randy or you about the reasoning, my biggest reasoning for going back to state code. Does anybody have questions for me on it? Or did you watch the commission meeting?
I watched.
So, okay.
Yeah, I understand the reason. I think that, it's good to know that there is a ray of hope for some type of economic policy advisory entity, task force that would be looking further down the road and be thinking about these goals. I think that there was a real missed opportunity to, sort of get the most out of the Trails to Tomorrow plan that we paid for because of the way it all has gone down. Like there was a chance, I think, for this committee to have really added value by going through that document and saying, this is current, we're seeing this, we agree, and this might not be so important, like giving our sort of advice about the implementation of some of the pieces of that document could have been really helpful. But every day that we don't do that, that document's getting older, and what can you do? So I think I'm really glad to hear that there is at least a conversation about some kind of joint that could be a way, everybody wants the city and the county to work better together, and I think an economic development board of people with some either business people or economic development and policy experience would be able to, help with giving information to the commission. It's not binding, unlike the whole planning thing where there's all these formal recommendations. We could be giving you data that, like, if we did this SWOT analysis, if we sat around and brainstormed what we think our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats are, that would just be information that the commission would have. It wouldn't be.
That'd be a really fun activity at the economic summit.
We might.
I mean, that would be really fun. You'd have a lot of people that's in the community, and what a fun little
Yeah, I'm
exercise
talking
you
to-
could do at that point in time. And then, and the
invite
commissioners will be
commissioners.
there as well, and councilmen will be there. I mean, so I think
I'm trying to
good
put that
idea.
on the agenda, yeah.
So I'm not trying to kibosh that independent thought or things to happen, and bring those forth, and the best way for you to bring those, if you don't think that the commission or the city council knows what's going on, there's a citizens to be heard at every single meeting, and you can come in and say, you guys are missing the boat, or whatever it is that you want to say. I mean, that's not going away. Telling the commission what you want is there. I mean, and also the liaison meetings, we're all in the liaison meetings as well. So, I mean, you're being heard, but I just want us to do a really good job. I'm an efficient and effective government, and I want us to do a really good job with these RCG and RCOG grants. I don't want us sitting here and saying, I wonder how they're doing on that. We should check in with them. I want us to check in with them. I want to know that they're getting along. I want to know that when we get to the end of the contract, that it's completed and that we're going to be able to move forward with getting the next amount of money. And I know it's only 200,000 and 600,000, but $800,000 is a lot to a little community. And especially if we can maximize that money through, matching grants and things. And those are things that this board needs to decide. Do we want to do matching grants? How much matching grants? How are we going to do this money? And so I do think that there's a big.
No, like if you wanted to have like the
Private,
applicants
yeah.
have to do a match.
Oh,
Yeah, so I think there's a lot that can happen, and once that's done and it's duplicatable, because the system that we did last year, I mean, you just submitted, it's not duplicatable, it's a lot of work. So we have to
no,
have,
I think it is. I think it's a good start.
it's a good start, but
Yeah,
we have a job to finish. So
Yeah.
when that job's finished, maybe by then we'll have been able to have some city-county collaboration meetings. And we'll be, or we could add some things to the bylaws. I'm okay with starting at the bare bones, doing a really good job, getting efficient, and then saying, where do we want to go next?
Well, I just want the commission to have more economic input. That's all I'm asking for, whether it comes from this committee or a different body. I think that there's.
be heard.
Yeah. Okay, Aaron.
Yeah,
2 minutes.
One of the
That's
things
one person.
I see is like, I want you to get reelected, and I want you to wield your power well. And I think, when you have hot takes, hot decisions, to me, managing the Grand County's economy would be like oh my God, I could make so many pitfalls. And like, to be like, oh no, these guys all said this. And then you can be like, oh yeah, I'm just following the advice. That's the only thing I think, and like, oh yeah, I can be like, well, 10 people told me over here, so good. That's.
Well, that's what's happening
well, no,
right
I
now.
just see this as an organizational force. That's like, hey, at least 9 out of 10 people said like, yeah, that's all I
Well,
would
it's,
say.
it's more like if we work it out as a group.
Brittany
and we come
and
up with
then
a
Forrest.
statement, then you know that that's been vetted by a committee, not just an individual.
Okay, Brittany.
I have to go along with Mel's comment on, we gotta get good at something, because right now I'm getting frustrated. Cause I joined the board because I was frustrated with, you know, just the handful of people that got the money, rather than, I mean, a lot of people didn't even know. So I feel like it was such a win when all of us came together and we all gotta put our little dots on the deal, and we gotta ask the question to the applicants about, does this coincide with, oh god,
Trail tomorrow.
the Trails to Tomorrow. So I really do feel like we've made some good strides
Agreed.
on how we're trying to push this forward. So I think trying to dilute it a little bit more just because we want to have an opinion when we can have an opinion regardless. I really think that that's important to understand, that like, we need to get that system down. And then it's no longer just Forrest buddy or Aaron's buddy or Randy's buddy that knew about this grant. It's the whole community, and we're really trying, because we might be surprised on who applies for those things. So I just think it's been a big win, and we need to continue to like go off of that momentum that we just came off of and get really good at. It might be, we already have all of the grant applicants, and we didn't get an award these people last year, and now we're gonna award them, and we want you guys to continue to apply or whatever. And I like the idea of workshops and that kind of stuff, of like, maybe like focusing in on those things versus like, we want to tell the commissioners this or that today. I think that that's kind of we're already doing that. She's heard us loud and clear. I'm pretty opinionated, so is Ashley. I mean, so.
But I think we'll have to stop doing that if the bylaws are changed.
We'll have to stop saying, hey, we think this.
Yeah, basically. I
Why
mean,
would you
Why
have
would
to
we have to?
stop saying that? Because I'm not gonna jump the line, you already called on people, I'm sorry. Put a pin in that.
okay, Forrest is up, and then you could ask Melissa to reply if you'd like to first.
One of the greatest entrepreneurs out of the Northwest was not in technology or forestry or anything that the Northwest is known for economically. It's a guy named Fred Meyer, who, if you've been to the Northwest, was the largest and the first one-stop shop system. It's now owned by Kroger. But when he donated his $1 billion or used his $1 billion to start a foundation, his comment was, the mountain is so big and my shovel is so small. And I think that was a challenge for the advisory board at the very beginning, when the charge was to focus on diversification. And then the grant program came along. And so the mountain got bigger, in the sense that all of a sudden you're not trying to find $200,000 or $600,000 for some specific projects. You're trying to figure out how to impact the entire economic ecosystem. That's what a lot of the awards were made for in 2022, 23, and 24. I think that Corey's comments convinced me that the linkage between economic health and well-being and housing is so strong in the community that we might have 2 shovels that can tackle that in more focused ways. I don't know the legal status of the housing task force. Is it appointed by the county and county commission and city council?
I think it was created by
Created.
but I don't know about I don't think it's appointments.
The
directly.
county, city, and HASU resolved to sign the interlocal agreement that they had bylaws framing how the construction of the board would be set. So it's not that it had, and this is where they're evolving to, is a separate funding or an operational budget. They were an execution body of volunteers that basically you had a position not unlike this body of representatives of agencies. So it was there would be a representative from CR. So community rebuilds would appoint a representative on their behalf that would annually circulate. So it was just a standing body, and it didn't have quite the same, to Aaron's point, you'd show up 3 times and all of a sudden you get a vote type thing. This is evolving of where that body is actually going for the purpose of it. So I'll kind of leave it there, but yeah, it in the bylaws, it was constructed with representation in mind.
So where we are now, it's clear that we're looking at a narrowing of focus of the advisory board to focus on the things that we can do well, and do with the minimum amount of time from volunteers. Although as a group, the advisory board will be making recommendations to the commission for the projects. That's my understanding. But this board could approach the process of creating a task force that is comparable or complementary to the housing task force. If the conversations have to focus there, then we're actually putting our time and energy into the 2 interlocking issues in this primary economic issues in the community. And I don't know what the process would be to do that. It would still allow the members of that task force, not advisory board, but task force, to bring to discussion and bring to city and county commissions, and continue the staff relationship that is evolving. And I'm really grateful for the way Corey, you and Melissa have gotten to the same page, because we haven't had that in the past, and would be very comfortable supporting the new bylaws that allow this board to focus on just the grants, but still have another venue for the kind of input, analysis, and conversations that Chris and Ashley have been talking about. That's all.
Melissa.
It kind of feels out of place and awkward because you guys are talking about the bylaws, but sort of what this feels to me, the best solution is almost like clean startup. So I feel like how the boards happened, and Forrest double check me on this, but historically how this board came to be is that you had county staff and people who were doing one thing that had a big economic diversification budget. And that board existed to craft, what are the solutions? What is the policy that we want to craft in order to execute on this really big budget? And they had that one board. Then the state comes along and says, now we're going to give you this little bit of money comparatively, 200,000 and 600,000, and compared to the economic diversification budget that they had, it was minuscule. But they said, you're going to have to follow these rules, and then we're going to give you this little bit of money. And instead of creating a new one to do that, they merged the 2. So that kind of made sense, right? And now where you kind of get to the Frankenstein part of that to me is the budget disappears. Now nobody has any money. And you've got this board with all of this beefy responsibility to advise and to plan and to write and to give input on general plan. But they have no money and they have no vehicle to execute on that. And now you no longer have planning staff and economic development staff and whatever. And now what this board feels to me is very much a solution in search of a problem. You've got a lot of really smart people who talk about some really big ideas, about some really important, impactful things, and they do not have $1 among them and they have no one to advise, and there is literally no, what does even advise mean? Those people knew what advise meant because they had money to spend. Advise means we're gonna say how we're gonna spend this money. So I feel like in order to be impactful and have some rubber meet some road, I'm almost putting on my private sector hat to say, this feels like a lean startup. Go back and focus on the grants, but focus on them in the context of what is the greater need from economic development. Because by the way, this board has plenty of impact and plenty of reach, and y'all got a lot done last month. Because in conversations, listening to Ashley or listening to people about outdoor recreation or what we need in the community or talking about Trail to Tomorrow, we already talked about Bentonville is eating our lunch in outdoor recreation because they're advertising that they are the outdoor mountain biking capital of the world. So just in the last month, implementing those ideas, which by the way, standing on the shoulders of the people in the conversations in this room, we already met with the BLM. We met with San Juan County. There's already conversation in place to have a bike trail to each one of those trail entrances. And how can Mud Springs be a larger recreation area? And what is the $300,000 master planning money that it would take in order to completely reimagine how we look at that recreation space to get an Iker race? We met with the representative of the Interscholastic Bike Association about what their requirements would be to get that this year. So in 2026, these are the milestones that would have to be met by February. These are the milestones that would have to be met by November. One of those is going to require a really healthy sum of money from the Department of Transportation to get an ingress. Great. We met with them already too. Now we have a budget. We've met with CERTA to find out what the support we need to get to have federal funding. And potentially in jumping through all of those hoops and working collaboratively, we could get a race that has 7,500 participants and families, 3,500 coaches, in addition to attendees, worth of economic impact in 2026.
Wow.
That's a lot
That's
coming
incredible.
from this board, but we haven't talked about that because I feel like we've spent the last 4 months talking about what does it mean to advise? What do the bylaws need to talk about? And I understand the need for public policy, but it has been made in the form of the city and the county for the extent that they've communicated that they're willing to make it for now. And within that, where we have the ability to actually impact is in talking about what that looks like. And I can tell you that right now there are 3 to 4 major initiatives and projects coming out of conversations that have happened in this room that need funding, that need strategic approach, that could benefit from combining how the RCG and the RCOG work together in order to get further faster, because there's no funding. So this group that used to have a budget and no longer has a budget can make all the suggestions and all of the advice that they would like. I can tell you that there is not $2.95 budgeted toward economic development beyond what we have right now. We've got to go and chase it ourselves. So what I would propose is a lean startup approach that says, take the bylaws to be what you know how to do effectively and what you know how to do well, which is how do we administrate this program within the greater context of the conversations about what that means in the context of our larger economy. And then how that board works and what the needs are, go back and ask for that additional authority. What we found now is we have the ability to do this. We need a little bit more budget. Is there appetite for changing the bylaws? But I think for me at this point, what my focus would be impact and efficacy. If anybody has any really great advice, and I believe if it were to come out of anyone, it would probably come out of the people from this room, that's great. There's no budget to match with it. So
Policy work doesn't always, it's not
Yeah,
just
it's
about
not always,
budget,
it's
it's
just
about
not-
vision, it's about a lot of, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lisa, and I think you make good points for sure.
Sometimes the suggestions require money and sometimes they don't. And there are certain things like that this commission is already pursuing that may or may not be good for our economy that aren't about money, they're about policy.
Okay, so we've got a half an hour left.
Something else I think that would be valuable to add to these bylaws, and maybe somebody can help me with that, is, I think that, so in the past, they kind of like, we're here to advise staff, but I really think it should be the opposite way around. I mean, staff's out there working every day of the week. And so when she comes to us and says, or whoever's in that position, hopefully Melissa for a really long time, you know, they come and they say, you know, these are the things I'm working on, and this is what I need help from you guys. I mean, so that would be something to add into theirs, you know, not necessarily us telling her
Serve
what
as a
to do, but
resource for,
yeah, that we would be a resource for our economic
I
development
mean,
staff.
if
There
we
you go.
put in there that, I think that's a great addition.
And that would give us
Yes.
the ability to speak
I think,
about whatever we wanted to.
I think that would go a long way.
Especially about what the goals of the county are and what she's trying to implement, you know, so if we are a resource to.
That was when we were having the conversation about advice giving and you were like, but we as commissioners know what's going on. That was what I was thinking is like, you know, it's a two-way street or when it's functioning well, this kind of advisory body is a two-way street, right? It's actually a dialogue is what you're entering into. And how you do that with a commission is harder. You're talking about really busy people. But absolutely. I mean, finding a way to write that into the bylaws so that there can be this board serving as a resource for economic development of the county would be huge.
Yeah, that language.
No, I don't.
What I have in mind, those were my suggestions to your bylaws, Melody, would just be to leave it open that this board could be a resource, not mandated to advise, but to be available to do so. Because right now we have way too many great people on this board full of knowledge and information to lose that capacity. And if you take away even that, you know, like resource, then the people that you have apply in the future, just, you may not get the same people. Then you know, just anybody could be sitting here and like, okay, well, let's decide which grants to approve. You know what I mean? But I think what drew most of these people to the board was because they wanted to be that resource. And I don't think you want to lose that, really. I mean, you know a lot about the economy personally, and I believe many of the other commissioners do as well. That's not always the case, you know, and you may need an advisory board at some point for some future commissions.
I do think that rather than us setting it up so that we're doing a scale back bylaws revision with the plan of moving in the future towards another bylaws revision when we like get things dialed is understandable, but maybe not the like I think what we want to accomplish is to have a set of bylaws that really wouldn't have to change every year or two for a board like this, like a mature economic opportunity advisory board, and we are not one yet because we've been through so many iterations and revisions, but a mature board would not have its bylaws changed every year. It would not have its goals or purpose change every year. You would change the things you're working on, the topics would change each year, but we would be trying to get towards, in an ideal world, a set of bylaws that articulate what this board is supposed to be for the county. And then how it functions in that role could change over time, right? And that to me is like, I really appreciate this last sort of suggestion and thought on how do we could be a resource, because it seems to me that that's moving in that direction of like, that's what, I mean, that's what this board should be for the county. That's another way of stating, I would have stated it in a more proactive way, but that's a very appropriate way of stating what the goal of this board is to serve as a resource that to promote economic development for this county, to serve as a resource for staff and commissioners in this county. That to me is a really clear articulation of what a body like this is meant to do.
I think it's great because I think that just definitionally, nuts and bolts, people understand and can interpret what's meant by resource. Advise, I don't even know what that means. Trying to figure it out between everyone in an email. Does that mean that we go to the Planning and Zoning Commission? Does that mean whatever? And I think that resource is really clear and I think it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and as Melissa gives her updates, we can give feedback, and that doesn't, then you don't feel like it's so, oh, we can't talk about feedback.
Yeah.
Because you felt like that these bylaws were too restrictive, so that's something I can definitely figure out how I'm gonna put it in these bylaws, that it's a resource, so it's gonna be you know, the main job at the moment is going to be to get the RCG, RCOD, but we'll also have included in there that we're resource to our economic development staff. And that way you don't feel like you have to not talk about it, because I don't think it's something that, you know, if we walk through the whole thing, we make a lot of progress on our policies and procedures, and those, when we're doing those grants and when you're writing that plan, that's where you think about that bigger picture of economic development, like what is it that we want to be accomplishing? You know, was it housing? Was it childcare? You know, was it mini grants? You know, what is the big, what's gonna help our economy the most? I know it's not the largest amount of money, but I think that sets this tone for the way that you guys want economic development to be in the future. You know, where are we going with it? And when Melissa comes in as staff and says, you know, I've got these really great projects going on and we could use these funds for that, you may pivot, you know, and say, you know, let's use our money for that instead of this. You know, Brittany really liked the sub-grants, but that doesn't necessarily have to be what, so maybe the plan needs to have 3 different pieces, like, you know, we could look at this sub-grants, we can look at larger, city and county collaboration, we can look at, you know, what is the direction? Because I think it will change, you know, is it to focus on housing? Is it to focus on new business? Is it to focus on, I mean, I want to focus on employees because we don't have the housing for the employees, you know, so, I think that those are the conversations are still gonna be there, because creating this plan is still a conversation about all the things that you want to talk about. It's just moving it in a little bit different direction.
Yeah, it's a piece of the conversation, right? I mean, that it's because you won't, you know, with a grant program, you're gonna say, how can we best use these small chunks of money, right? Which is a different conversation than like, what should the priorities be for the county on economic development? Because we're gonna have to say like, if the, you know, priority would be you know, that we get more density with a rewrite of zoning laws, that we bring in, attract these businesses, anything like that, right? Anything that would be like a big strategy, we're not gonna have the budget to do.
Yeah.
So we will be restricted by it, but you know, I think that it's also understandable.
And then as we mature, then that will change, you know, as it matures. I mean, like you just said, it is a new board. It does have, and the bylaws are just they've been too broad. And I want to bring them in and then they can go, they can be expanded in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there is macro and micro, right? And if we had decided to give all the money we had in the grant program to the manufacturing entity that applied, to the one manufacturing entity, would that be identifying a macro opportunity? Not necessarily. It might have just been identifying a good grant app, you know, a good opportunity to spend that grant money that would have got the results. So I think they are really different things. There are macroeconomic forces that are affecting our county that if we don't face the reality about them, we will be behind that 8 ball on them. And we already are on several. So that macro discussion of what is happening, but you know, I think that framing it as we're advising Melissa, yeah, we can't, if the commission doesn't want to talk about something, they can tell us we don't care. I mean, they can not listen or whatever. There's no obligation on their part to listen, but it does seem kind of a little like, I think about framing it as advising staff is a great way to do it. And that opens the door for us to say, hey, there's a macroeconomic trend out there that we're concerned about that's going to affect our community. I think if.
Being a resource. Yeah, but yeah, you can say that, and then
And she
Melissa
can
can go
look-
back and take that information, like, that's really great, or come to you and say, I want more information on that.
Right.
Or if she's saying there's like a race and you're going like, oh, I know all this stuff about it and I don't necessarily think that fits in our, I mean, I think feedback, so the feedback is gonna go both ways. And I think that that's the way that I like to see this board going forward. And I appreciate all the work that you guys did this last year without an economic.
Yeah, I was gonna
development.
say, I think you've also witnessed this board operate without an economic development department for most of the time that you've been on it, which is unfortunate because that type of a back and forth is part of what this board has historically done. You know, whatever opinion you have about how economic development departments worked here or not, like that is something that was missing this year. Until Melissa got the
We didn't have
position,
that,
right?
so I appreciate all of you.
And I think in addition to that, you know, we're talking about the need to document and make this process replicatable into the future. You know, we also haven't done that yet because we didn't have staff for half the year, right? I mean, that would be done by now.
But you didn't do it
So-
last year either.
Well,
No.
there was a different strategy, just as
Yeah,
you're talking about, like how the strategies have changed over time. I mean, this year we were given suggestion, mandate even, you might say, from the commission to open this up as a sub-grant program, right? I mean, what happened in years past is something more like what you're talking about now, which is a strategic priority was identified. a call was put out for the applicable parties, if they, you know, are you interested in partnering on this? I mean, so anyway, I think they're both legitimate processes, and I agree with you that there's space for discussing them. But I think I think we all know this. I don't think that, you know, the fact that there isn't a documented guidebook for this process in place, it has to do, I think it has as much to do with the way that staffing has worked over time in economic development in the county, which is to say there's been
Yeah.
tons of changes there.
Does she even know what she'd be writing about? I mean, if we just said, hey, go do this right now, Melissa, would she even know what she's supposed to be doing?
She will, I think that based on mandate, you know, of what the board's responsibilities are, it would need to be something that's done in conjunction. So it wouldn't be something done entirely by this board or entirely by staff.
Yeah, so
It would be
it's-
something done in conjunction with the two. And so you obviously need functioning both parties, like you need a functioning board and you need functioning staff. And right now we have those two things. So that's awesome. And let's get this done. Totally on board with that.
Okay.
But I do, I think there's a lot, you know, yeah, if we're trying to, I don't think we should jump into this conversation by blaming somebody in the past for why it hasn't been done.
No, I don't blame on Patty. That's why I just want to go in the future, but you know, it hasn't been done, but we are gonna go forward and we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your reframing it and taking the time to think about it a little bit, and I think that the point is for us to be useful and to, you know, to bring things to folks' attention. It's still the commission's choice which things they want to focus on, but having that input from a diverse group of people is valuable, and it's still the commission's choice which ones they wanna they wanna dive into.
So Aaron, and then I think we're gonna try to put like a bow on this conversation. Oh, you didn't?
No,
Okay, you're
but
good.
thanks, I felt really, you know, with that whole, that was a great conversation. I was like, oh, I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that was interesting, Corey's point about the vacuums and stuff. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, great. So we have a couple other things on the agenda for today. One of them, one of the things when I was talking about the agenda for today, I was like, I want to make sure that we're making progress on the grants because I'm hearing from the commission, like they want to make sure that we're making progress on the grants. And a couple of people had to say, yeah, but we have this like elephant in the room. We need to dedicate a lot of time to that. So I'm glad we did. But I do also want to see if we can make a little bit of progress on this plan for our COG and our CG going forward. And the idea that Melissa and I sort of had just a preliminary conversation about, and we're just brainstorming, but was that we might want to put together a subcommittee to try to make some progress basically between now and the end of the year on, documenting some things and setting up like what are the questions we need input on or motions on from this board so that progress can be made. I don't know if Melissa, you want to take a second to describe what would be like what you see the job of a subcommittee if we decide to form one to be in working with you over the next month or so.
One of my big concerns is nimbleness. So here's how I see kind of the grant program last year, and then maybe potentially the little bit before that, is I feel like if you look at our grants as a whole, number one, I don't think we know how any of them performed. Like, I don't think, and I'm speaking now as a board member, so this isn't saying, oh, we're not accountable. When I say we in this, I'm talking about all of us. I don't know that we know necessarily how they performed. I don't know that if we gave them enough money to be able to even get anything down the road. It feels a bit to me, and I am open to pushback on this. It feels a bit to me like taking a really dry, dusty well and throwing glasses of water down it. Because I don't necessarily know what the big strategic picture was, right? So if you look at affordable housing, I feel like we've made great strides in affordable housing. In part because MACL got support for a large CDBG, they got support for a large RCOG grant. They've gotten community support, they've gotten private funding, they've gotten loans associated against that. And because of all of that, I feel like we've made some strides in affordable housing. I would like to take some of those approaches and maybe looking at these programs moving forward also in a bit more of a strategic way. How often do we get an opportunity to really talk about that? So we had this one meeting, technically speaking, we don't meet again until next month. By then, we need to have had a process put together. What does that process look like? Is it sub-grants again? Are we going to require matching? How are we gathering better information? Because the feedback that I've gotten from GOYO also is we need to do a better job at getting EINs and getting formalized applications and processes. Can we do that quickly as a larger group? Do there need to be more meetings? Is there a subcommittee? Do we need more of that by email? I don't know. But I do think more conversations would be helpful because like I said, we can have one conversation and because I've got 40 hours invested every week, moving really quickly, that's a lot of missed opportunity to move in a direction and make some impact.
But the other thing too, I think, is that I felt a little bit like if we make it, I think the mandate was make it more transparent, let everybody know, get more grants. It's true, but a lot of people worked on some grants that weren't really, we didn't give them enough direction. I feel like we could, if we had a little more clarity on the goals that we have, or why a business really is meriting this investment from the public sector into the private sector. Like, why are we doing this? And so I think that it could be more efficient. We could have less applicants that are more on point of our goals if we had the clearer goals of what type of thing we're trying to invest in.
Or for example, it may not even be businesses at all. We might want to engage a master plan for something at the airport or something at OSTA, or, we've talked a lot about there is potential for not necessarily private investment in convention capacity. Maybe the county needs something other than sales tax revenue, and we might like something around that, and we could commission a study or a master plan around something like that. So I think being able to talk as a group and be able to have that time, is it really a sub-grants program?
Melody,
I don't
do you
know.
think there would be openness from the commission for something that was not a sub-grant program? Like considering a strategic priority within the county or the airport or something like
Yeah,
that? Is that something?
Strategic
Okay.
inside of the county, because then we're not picking favorites, right? Because I think before, and I mean, I
Yeah, I hear you.
appreciate your feedback of like, that was our goal, was housing or childcare. But but even with childcare, was a lot more childcare providers that we could have, if that's what it was, you reached out to all of them. And I think that was where specifically our county attorney was like, we need to be sharing this far and wide. But if we're gonna just do a master plan for our county, we don't have to share it wide, it doesn't
Yeah, it's
have to be-
different. Yeah.
Well, or we
Different.
could host like
So-
the city and the county to do the more collaboration of like a workshop that says, hey, what's your thought process? What's your thought? And do something that's pretty structured to get that feedback from both entities and then say, hey, we have a great idea.
You could take that same approach and potentially say, we've got an initiative where there's a lot of TRT money available. So if you were to say something like around an outdoor recreation project or a tourism adjacent project or whatever, you partner with the city, you partner with the county, you've got CDBG available, you've got federal grant funding available, you've got a municipality that can apply for things that the county can't apply for. Between all of those things, if you've got $2-3 million in funding for a strategic collaborative project, now you've got impact and knock glasses of water down a dry well.
Yes.
Those kinds of things get me really excited.
So maybe what subcommittee, like, I'm just trying to think of how we get this done and how we kind of get to decision points, but maybe what we could do is like have a small group kind of articulate a couple of different visions for how the RCG process could look next year. I mean, it sounds like one might be a more focused sub-grant program. One might be exploring a tie-in with, I don't know how to say it exactly, but what you just said, basically, right? Like a more strategic project that could potentially pull in other sources of funding that we would be one of multiple for, so you could get something big accomplished. And then we could bring that back to the board to pick a direction on, right, to offer. Does that sound about right? I mean, I want to make sure that if it's.
And I think having those written to where in the future, a new board or would be able to see that you went down those directions too.
Yeah.
Maybe having, these are the two directions that this board has seen that they can choose from each year, you know?
Yeah, like thinking
so-
about how you put, right, how is this creating a playbook for future
Playbook.
rather than
Yeah,
just,
this year we're
how
gonna
we
do
do
this,
it this
and
year,
next year we're
yeah.
gonna do this, but you know, like, we have discussed this and this.
yeah.
This year we've chosen to go this direction. That doesn't leave that other piece of gone for the future. You know, so as the board changes and moves and staff changes, we have this, yes, playbook that we can go out and say, you know, or three different ways, sub grants,
Also.
you know, mini, and then big collaborative effort. So I mean, there could be these different, and then each year, then you pick which path is the best path for that year, depending on what's going on in the economy.
Well, and I would
There you
like
go.
impact, like thermometer of some sort, so I know, if we chose whatever, it would be nice to have like the impact thermometer of like, this really went this far, you know what I mean? Because I feel like you're right, with the glasses going down a dry well, you don't know that until, I mean, I did see it in the housing as well, but even these mini grants or whatever, it may have been impactful to that small business, but then it's like, was it super? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It would be nice to know, like, go backwards and ask them, tell me about this and where did this money go and how far did it go? And you know what I mean? It didn't set you up for these next years or whatever, because it would be nice to see if we had a report card on that.
Yeah. And do we have, so, my other question is outside of this, but so you guys, the grants were decided, they came before the commission. They are out there. Are the contracts written? I mean, do we have contracts written with all of those different entities? Do we need to, does this board need to help write the contracts? You know, with the deliverables? And then when does that start? So the grant cycle, I think that the commission gets the money in October, $200,000, and then we disperse it from there, or we do the contracts and then we have them spend the money and then they get reimbursed. I mean, so those are all of the things that I'm curious about, even from last year's, or I mean, this year, it would be this year's, but we already did it. So now we're looking to the future, but we still have to look at the past of what needs to happen with those and helping them maybe even. Is the golf course actually gonna do their master plan, you know? Is there anything that this board or you need to do to help them, you know, to move along so that the money's just not out there floating in
Sure.
space? I mean, not that it's floating in space right now, the county will have the money and then that will get dispersed, but all the work that this board did doesn't just,
And the
Disappear.
contract, if I'm not mistaken, is written by the county, and then they say, so, because like Rob had to go back and ask for it right now, right? So is that all part of this contract of like, you gotta get it done in this time frame and blah, 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 and there's not really a extension?
So the Economic Development Department, and I like to call it we, department, because it makes me feel surrounded. We're going through the same process that this board is going through, right? So I'm writing those SOPs about what needs to happen once we're funded. So the answer to the first question is it hasn't been funded yet. GOEA will let us know when that is funded. And then our department works with legal to make sure that all of those contracts get out and are reviewed by each one of the entities that were approved by the county. And then they'll sign those agreements and then they will be funded. And then we will have processes and procedures at the county level, not just this board, to have check-ins. To say, how is this going? How are we measuring against the deliverables? How are we doing on spend? Only because I like zero surprises, because we now have amended and have gone through grants multiple times, and it has taken a lot of time on our staff's part.
As
Not
well as
because
GOEA
anyone,
too. I mean,
yes, tons,
yeah.
Deborah and James have been amazing, but they have spent hours with me to kind of sort through this stuff. And again, it's not because anyone's done anything wrong, it's just that we need to do a hard reset and talk about moving forward in the absence of staff, with changes to a board, with staff in and out. This process should still flow smoothly so that we get to the end of grant reporting and we're not trying to scramble to figure out which projects need extensions. So that's what staff is working to do also. And we will be happy to give you an update from that department as soon as we have an update from GOEA.
So who around the table would be interested, I think there's actually two ways I'm thinking of that this can be like a formal subcommittee, or it can be as simple as a couple people having a conversation, because we're really just setting up an agenda item for the future. But who around the table would be interested in being involved in some of these conversations about trying to like set up these couple different options for the future of the grants, how we manage them over the next month or so?
Sure.
Okay, great. I would too. Great. So should we?
Yeah, yeah.
So does somebody want to make a motion to form a subcommittee with these members?
I'll make a motion. We're gonna put a subcommittee together of Chris, Aaron and me
And I think Melissa
and Melissa to
Should- yeah.
discuss. Do I need to be really specific or we're good?
discuss to do our RCG planning.
I'll second.
Seconded by Randy. Any discussion? All in favor? Looks like it's unanimous. Great. Thank you. Okay, and final agenda item was just to go over the meeting schedule, since it's been changed and holidays and stuff like that. I think I was just going, I actually am also realizing we don't have it in the minutes. But I just went through my meeting notes and found the dates that I have are meeting on 11/19 and 12/17. Does that sound right to people? Okay. Does anyone have Randy, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, that looks great.
Okay.
Wait, sorry, y'all, you're going fast.
Yeah, I don't have a class schedule either,
11/19.
so.
And 12/17.
Okay,
It's the Wednesday before the holidays the following week.
Yeah.
got it.
So it's right. So we decided at our last meeting to move our November meeting, to pull it ahead of Thanksgiving, and to pull our December meeting before Christmas and the other holidays there.
So are we're not needing to interview people that meeting in November, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Because
I
that,
mean, yeah, right, that was the plan. Formally, nothing's changed yet.
Yeah.
But it
when
seems
will we know
prudent to not move forward with inviting anyone to interviews when there's not necessarily going to be a position. So I would suggest that we just hold on that until the commission acts on the bylaws, and then we move forward with any openings. Does that sound right to you?
Melody, do you want me to reach out to our council to see if there's any interest? Would you like me to reach out to them?
I mean, I'll speak
Sounds
not as behalf of the board, but I would say yes, because that, no matter what, even if these bylaws don't go through, then your position still needs to be filled in that capacity. And so if you want to reach out to Castle Valley first, let's give them the first right of refusal and then go to the city if everybody else feels good about that. I think that's how we should do it. That's great.
I think it's reasonable.
Get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you.
A question on the municipality aspect of that position, it has to be a staff appointed or elected representative of a municipality, or is it, I think there was some question about this way back about what that actually means, a representative of a municipality.
Yeah, it's staff or, I think it's staff or elected. So it's just, that has to be representative from a municipality. So not like, so for me, because I think, like it talks about representative of the people that live in the county. Well, everybody lives in the county, whether you live in the county
Right.
or the city. But the
Right.
city representative, Deb mentioned it was basically somebody that works at the city level.
Okay.
Or elected
Okay.
at the city level or the municipality level as far as Castle Valley goes. So
Okay.
even do you guys have Castle Valley employees? I think so.
Yeah. Like, I have 6 employees, yes.
6 employees. Yeah, I mean, so you could extend it to them as well and not just the elected,
Okay.
not just to elected. And then,
Okay. It's 4:59. Let's adjourn.
Did we reschedule a meeting? I'm sorry, I have ADHD now.
The meeting schedule,
Yeah.
11/19 and 12/17.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty funny, Aaron. Well, have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Yes. Okay.
being true to
So
my.
much about government.